Welcome to the Blueprint Breakers podcast. What is a blueprint breaker? If you live your life outside the typical traditional lifestyle blueprint, you are a blueprint breaker. We are here to start a conversation, to assemble resources, and to build a community. This podcast is for empowered women in midlife and beyond who are preparing for a powerful next era of life. My name is Amy A. Palmer. I am your host and facilitator for our conversations. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. To stay connected, up to date, and to receive all of our free resources and gifts along the way, join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. One of the things I love most about this podcast is getting to hear perspectives that are very different from my own lived experience. Sometimes those conversations are inspiring, sometimes surprising, and sometimes they challenge assumptions we didn't even realize that we were carrying. Today's conversation is one of those. We're talking about polyamory and ethical non-monogamy in midlife, a topic that can feel unfamiliar or even a little uncomfortable for some people. But rather than approaching it with judgment or sensationalism, I wanted to approach it with curiosity. Because when we hear how other people design their lives and relationships, we often learn something meaningful about honesty, autonomy, and connection. My guest today is Tracie Guy-Decker. Tracie is a podcaster, writer, illustrator, and mom based in Baltimore, Maryland. She co-hosts the podcast Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit with her sister and is launching a blog and memoir project called Hot Flash of Genius, where she shares the challenges, joys, and insights of ethical non-monogamy in midlife. In this conversation, Tracie shares how she found herself exploring this lifestyle later in life, what ethical non-monogamy and what polyamory actually means, and what it requires in terms of communication, honesty, and self-awareness. Whether this topic feels relatable to you or completely outside your experience, I think you'll find this conversation fascinating. Hello, Tracie. Welcome to Blueprint Breakers.
Thanks for having me
You today.
It is really good to be seen.
As I told you just before we started, I'm new to this topic, so I'm really, really excited to talk about your experiences and what you've learned, and kind of scratch the surface in some places. So thank you so much for being willing and excited to come on here and chat about it.
Yeah, I am excited. So let's dive in.
Good. So let's turn the clock back a little bit. I would love to hear about what it is, whether it was a moment or a situation or an experience when you realized that sort of the relationship model that you had been existing in wasn't working for you and what wasn't where you wanted to be. Can you tell me a little bit about that sort of awakening and learning?
Yeah, it was several moments that sort of had a cumulative effect,
Mm-hmm.
So my story is less unusual now than I think it has been in years past. But my spouse, I was married to a man. We were married for 14 years, and then they came out to me as non-binary. So meaning that they don't identify as a man, they don't identify as a woman. They are sort of between the genders. And that was, to be frank, really like, you don't know what it's going to be like until it happens to you. And it had me questioning all kinds of things, my orientation, my sexual orientation, my gender, like everything. And one of the things that was really like strong in my head was, I made a commitment to this person and this is who this person is. And I want them to be who they are. And I still feel that way. But it turns out that you can't, that whole like screaming about how sexual orientation is not a choice, which I have done in my youth to sort of protect my queer friends, like turns out it's true for me too. So my spouse actually suggested that we open up the marriage fairly early because they were feeling like they weren't enough for me in some way. And initially I was like, no, that's not what I want. Of course, that's not what I want. And then I sat down like 2 years in with a friend and colleague, an acquaintance and colleague who went through a similar experience. They assigned female at birth. They actually, when their spouse came out as trans, so assigned male at birth, and but in fact a woman, they realized that they also were non-binary. And I was talking with them, and they and their wife they read the book The Ethical Slut together, and they decided to pursue polyamory as like a way to kind of be true to themselves and also stay together. So I suggested this to my spouse. So we read The Ethical Slut together along with our couples counselor, actually. And I started to sort of see the benefit of having multiple partners. Like it makes sense to me that no one person could fulfill all of one's needs. And in fact, in The Ethical Slut, the authors talk about how some people even get jealous when their partner has lots of friends, which would never have flown with me. I have so many, different friends and acquaintances and friend groups and folks. I am the classic extrovert who energized by people. And so I wanted to pursue it. So I went on, they have apps for that. So I went on one of the dating apps that's specifically open to polyamory. And initially, my first date was with a trans woman because I was still thinking maybe my sexual orientation was people assigned male at birth who no longer identify as male. Turns out that's not the case. Okay. So then I met a man who I fell in love with, and I was dating him and still trying to make my marriage work. And he got back together with his ex, and we were still all, I was still seeing him, but it became clear that he actually was not as polyamorous as he thought. And he was with
ex
the
or
boyfriend. The boyfriend.
All right.
And he started withdrawing, and I kept trying to accommodate, and at a certain point, as that relationship ended, because he decided to be monogamous with the ex and now current girlfriend, I suddenly realized like it was the same shit, different dude. Like the ways I accommodated, like the ways that my boyfriend needed to be accommodated were different than the ways that my spouse needed to be accommodated. But the bottom line, I was still putting my partner's preferences, needs, and comfort first. So much so that like I was denying my own preferences, needs, and comfort. And that was like, if there was one awakening, I would have to point to that. But it was actually like these multiple like cumulative effects. So when I broke up, I had decided to end my marriage already, not for the boyfriend, but because it just wasn't serving. And I think I decided it would be better for both of us. And then I broke up with the boyfriend, stayed the course with the separation. But when the boyfriend and I broke up, I was like, I'm not doing this again. And so the way I have decided to not do this again, to not do the same shit, different dude, is to date multiple dudes at once. And so I have currently 4, 2 very regular and 2 irregular that I see, not as regularly, about once a month. And by spreading it out, I'm not pouring too much into any one of them. So, because I don't believe that this is, sort of feeling depleted or accommodating or putting myself second is something that my spouse nor my boyfriend or any previous boyfriend did to me.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's a thing that I was taught. That's how I was taught love looked.
Yeah.
And so it was what I believed romance was supposed to do. And Amy, it's Tom Sawyer's fence, like we were told like, this is it. This is the best thing ever. And now 20 years later, I'm holding this paintbrush going like, wait, this is a lot of work and it ain't that much fun.
Right.
So I may change my mind. At some point in the future, I may decide that this isn't working and I've done enough work on myself that I will continue to prioritize my own needs. But for right now, I can't imagine giving up any of my partners. I enjoy their company. I enjoy the sex. I enjoy all of them, like, so that's the nutshell of like the awakening, if you will.
So I have some questions.
Of course.
So you and your spouse talked about opening up the marriage after they came up to you.
Indeed. Yeah. Long after. It had not been an option. It had not been a conversation topic. So they came out in May of 2021.
Okay.
And they suggested opening it up probably just a couple months later.
Okay.
And I shut that down. I was not interested. It did not feel good.
Okay.
But then in probably May of 2024, is when I had coffee with this friend who also had their
Okay.
spouse come out as trans. And
Okay.
it had been cooking for long enough that my knee jerk, no, that's not
Mhm.
acceptable,
Mm.
had been softened enough for me to think, well, what harm could it do to read this book?
Right. Okay. And when you agreed to do that, was the assumption so I'm trying to make sure that I understand what opening a marriage means. Was the assumption that it was open just for sex? I mean, were there limitations or rules? Was your spouse also opening up and connecting with other people? Like, what did that all? How'd that all play out?
Yeah, so for us, they actually chose not to.
Mhm.
Initially, we talked about, both of us. They chose not to. I am somewhat demisexual, which means that I don't wanna have sex with strangers. Like, I
Mhm.
wanna have an emotional connection
Uh-huh.
with in order to, like, really be into it. Like, I
Right.
need to have an emotional connection with someone. So, opening it up just for sex was not an option for me.
Okay.
And so we did have, based on the recommendations in the Ethical Slut, like, we had negotiated ground rules, which were always open to being changed. So for us, those ground rules involved, no overnights, and we had to reconnect after one of us had a date, which in the
Uh-huh.
end, it was only me that was dating. And reconnection meant, like, spending quality time together. It didn't necessarily mean sex, though
Uh-huh.
sometimes it did.
Uh-huh.
But it really meant, like, spending some time to, like, just
Get
be in each other's
connect again.
company and
Yeah.
do something together.
Mhm.
Um, there were y you know, my spouse and I decided to be fluid bonded, which is a thing that Ethical Slut talks about, which means that I used condoms with any other partners. That was part of the ground rules.
Mhm.
So, we did have rules about engagement outside
Okay.
of marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what you describe when you're talking about so you needed to have that emotional connection and that you have multiple partners now. That sounds like just you're dating around. Like it just sounds like I mean, I've had times in my past where I've been seeing multiple guys at the same time. I didn't necessarily call it polyamory. Was it and I didn't know it, or is there another nuance to it?
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert, so I know my experience. I
Yeah.
think part of the question is, like, when that time in your life when you were dating multiple people, were you, like,
Mhm.
waiting to see which one you liked best? Like, were you keeping your options open until you could, like, find the one you actually wanted? That's not
Mhm.
polyamory, in
Okay.
my
Yeah, that
opinion.
kinda was what I was doing.
Versus, like, my current partners, 2 of them are married. Their wives know.
Mhm.
In one case, the wife is basically asexual and just isn't interested in sex. In
Mhm.
the other case, she is also dating and is dating many people.
Mhm.
So, like, I'm not just, like, keeping my options open until the one I like best rises to the top. That's not what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm this is what I want
Right.
for the duration.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's what I would call the difference. Also, the fact that my partners have other partners, and I
Okay.
know about it, and that's cool. And in fact, in some cases, I know them. I know the other partners in some cases.
Mhm.
My two most regular boyfriends, the one I see weekly and the one I see almost weekly, they have become friends and hang out without me sometimes. Probably earlier in your life when you were sort of dating multiple people, that wasn't happening. At
Right.
least not because they met through you. You know.
Or if they did, they didn't know. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. When I hear your story, which makes sense how it progressed the way that it did. But what strikes me is it seems like take going the polyamory path was a solution to a challenge. It seemed like okay, so your marriage took a turn from what you had originally expected going into it, and you loved and cared about your spouse enough and cared about the marriage enough to want to come up with a solution to make it work. It seems like that's how it came up as opposed to this is just who you are and that that this was just is that accurate? Like, I guess it's probably a chicken and the egg kind of a thing, but What are your thoughts on?
I definitely think you're right that initially, like, I would not have permitted myself to think about it
Right.
because it's outside to the name of your podcast, it's outside of the blueprint
It's way out. Yes.
that
Yes.
I had been given as something that, like, good girls do.
Right.
And so I would never have sort of sought it out if I hadn't had that inciting incident. You're right. And what actually has made me commit to it, if you will, was that first boyfriend and the ways in which it was monogamy adjacent. He was the only other person I was seeing besides my spouse. And I was the only person he was seeing until he reconciled with his ex. So there was this, it was a monogamy adjacent. And I was treating it just like I had treated all of my past relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I had seen what was possible in polyamory. And so while I think you are right in terms of like what my on-ramp was, now that I'm here, I actually do feel like maybe this is where I'm meant to be.
Got it.
I don't know how long, but
Right.
it definitely feels like sort of who I am, at least right now. Right now.
Mm-hmm.
So like we talked about the ground rules that I had with my spouse. I now have ground rules with myself, only myself. So I don't see anybody more than once a week. I don't want to fall into that thing that new relationship energy will do, where that other person is that all encompassing. It's the all you can think about, which feels like it's what we've been taught. That's what being in love is. I think it's actually new relationship energy. And that new relationship energy sort of masks those bad habits to which I am prone of putting the other person first. And then the new relationship energy wears off and I'm still putting the other person first. And so, I mean, at this point, I've been seeing the two most regular boyfriends who I see the most often. Both of them I met right around the same time in June, and we're
Mm-hmm.
speaking in early January. So I've been seeing them for a while. We
Mm-hmm.
use the L word. Like,
You do or you don't?
we do.
You do. Okay.
And like it's real, but it's not monogamous and it's not exclusive. And in fact, those two guys know each other and really enjoy one another's company. And they met through me.
Right.
So where was
And
I
were
going
they
with this?
specifically seeking polyamorous connections, or
Well,
did the
yes.
connection with you come first and then they learn? No. Okay.
No. Both of them. In fact, I don't date on the apps. You'll see like people can say they're open to monogamy or
Okay.
non-monogamy. A
Uh-huh.
man who says he's open to either, I don't
Okay.
swipe. I swipe the other way, left,
Okay.
on men who say that, because those people are actually sort of like what we described before. They'll date
Mhm.
multiple people until they find the one they want
Right.
to actually be with. I'm
Right.
not interested in that.
Okay.
I'm not that person. I'm not that girl for them. So all of the men that I'm dating are specifically polyamorous.
Okay.
In fact, I prioritize men who have primary partners. I won't cheat. Like, I'm not going to go out with a guy who's married and she doesn't know.
Right.
But if they are in a ethical, non-monogamous relationship, I prioritize men who have primary partners, because I don't know if this actually works, but my thought is they've got that person who helps do the emotional labor that I don't really want to do. Or
Mhm.
I want to do when I want to do it, not
Right.
because I feel obligated to do it.
Right. That makes sense. And you meet the other partners or the wives or
Sometimes
sometimes?
it depends on that couple,
Right.
so of the two partners who are married, I've met one of the wives, and in fact, she and I text now and then, and I have not met the other.
Okay. All right. So forgive my ignorance. I'm definitely representing the not deeply educated on the topic part of the
Yeah.
audience. But because, I mean, it's the kind of thing that I've been aware of and I've known about for a long time, but don't give much thought to it. I don't have judgment about it.
Sure.
Although probably there is probably some judgment.
No doubt.
I think sort of like a first impression when you think, I had a family member share that they were polyamorous a few years ago. And when they confided that in me and then sort of explained it further, I did have a lot of initial reactions about what I thought that meant. And it feels like so I'm going to share with you, and I don't want to offend you, but
I will not be offended.
okay, all right, because I'd love to talk about it. But like my first thought is, well, that's just a way to say you just want to be able to have sex with a bunch of people and not feel guilty about it. Like that was my first thought. And then my second thought was, oh, well, that's just because you haven't met the right person yet. And so you don't have the right monogamous relationship. I know that those are both very like uneducated knee jerk reactions, but I'd love to hear sort of your view, like what your response is to some of those preconceived notions.
Yeah, I think those are totally normal. I think the other one is, like, you don't wanna have to do the work to, like,
Mm,
have, like, a committed relationship, so you just call yourself polyamorous so that you can just, like, move on.
mm.
That's the other one that
The
I think
commitment
comes up.
phobe, like a commitment phobe
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. So, I mean, I am having sex with
Mhm,
multiple men, and I don't feel guilty about it.
mhm,
So, you're not wrong about that. And I don't like, I'll be 50 next month. I've had a lot of monogamous relationships.
mhm,
Like, I mean, I was married for 17 years, and I did not cheat. Like,
mhm,
I was monogamous. I was faithful for all of those years. But before that, I also had a whole long list of monogamous boyfriends, ranging from 6 months to 4 years, you
mhm,
know?
mhm,
So, it's not that I haven't tried on monogamy. It's not that I haven't found the right one. It's that I am comfortable with the truth, and I believe it is a truth, that no one person can fulfill all of my needs. I don't
mhm,
mean sexually,
mhm, right.
but like, you know, one person can't they're not gonna be a clone of me. I wouldn't want them to be a clone of me, but they're not gonna be able to meet me in all of the places that I wanna be met.
Mm,
And yes, of course, I can do that through non-romantic partners, but there's something extra satisfying and special and just really wonderful about having them met through
mhm,
romantic partners. I just don't believe maybe he's out there, but I don't think so. I actually think that's a lie, that one person is out there, a lie that has been perpetuated to control women's sexuality, frankly.
yeah.
So, and in terms of the one that I brought in, the accusations of sort of commitment phobia, like, uh, I mean, it's only been 7 months, so, I guess I can come back in a year and we can see where we are, but I wanna be with these men for a long time. Like,
Mhm,
I'm envisioning futures that don't involve the relationship escalator, as they call it. Like, they don't involve that ever-increasing ladder of, like, enmeshment.
right.
I don't wanna live with anybody ever again, I don't think. I
I can
mean,
relate to that.
again, I may change my right? Like, I may change my mind, but right now, like, this is my place. I
Mhm,
decorated exactly the way I want it. I didn't have to check with anybody. I didn't have to accommodate anything I didn't like. Like, I
mhm,
keep it the way I want it, and I want it that way. I don't ever wanna live with anybody again. And so that sort of relationship escalator that, says that, like, first you date, and then you make it exclusive, and then you say the L word, and then you move in together, and then you, like, all of those. I took the exit ramp. I'm opting out, but that doesn't mean I'm opting out of commitment.
mm,
Like, I am committed to these men, to
right,
all of my boyfriends.
right. I forgot to ask you, do you have kids?
I have one daughter. She's 13.
Okay.
So she's with me during the week and with her other parents on the weekends, which works out well for me. She knows she has not met. This is actually hilarious. So we actually ended up kind of having to come, my spouse and I ended up kind of having to come out to her because she figured out that I was seeing someone and she accused me of cheating. And so we came out to her as polyamorous, which, given my spouse's gender stuff, was actually, like, eased a little bit. I don't know
Okay.
if my daughter thought so, but so I let her know that I was no longer seeing that person, so I didn't want her to think that I was leaving her other parent for anyone. She didn't wanna know. She did not wanna know about dating
Right.
when we came out to her initially, but then after I, let her know that that person, I wasn't with that original boyfriend and whatever, I said, "Do you wanna know when I am dating, when I have dates?" And she was like, "I guess so." And so I had one coming up. This was over the summer. And she wanted to know his name, and she wanted to know how I met him, and instead of asking what he looks like, she said, "Is he ugly?" Which was hilarious. And then I said, "And honey, he's not the only one I'm seeing. I'm seeing 3 men." And she was like, "Damn, mom." And I said, "They all know about each other. I am not lying to anyone." She was like, "Okay."
Mhm.
And then she says, "I don't wanna meet any of them." And I said, "Okay." She said, "I do not want you to get married again." And I was like, "Cool, same." She said, "I don't care how much you like him, he can't move in with us." I said, "Okay." And then she was quiet for a little while, and then she turned to me and she went, "Wait, mom, are any of them rich? Because I would meet a rich one."
Oh, jeez.
So that was pretty hilarious. So she
That's
knows
funny.
about them. She doesn't
Okay.
love it, but I I actually think that she's 13, and so I think that in 10 years, right,
Uh-huh.
she's gonna come back and say, "I can't believe you stayed as long as you did." I
Mhm.
think she's going to really get it, and I hope I am teaching her that women and moms are allowed to have fun, are
Mhm.
allowed to have pleasure, take care of our families, but not at the expense of our own joy.
Or
Like, I
self.
hope that is what I'm teaching her.
Yeah, like you are a full, whole person. Yeah. And I do think that the younger generations appear to have an easier time of wrapping their brains around these new discoveries and things. So I have noticed some of that. Now, you've alluded to the fact that you've learned a lot about yourself through this journey, about yourself and yourself as it happens with relationships, and you've talked about some of it, but I'd love to hear a little more about what have you learned that you could share?
Well, a lot of it is around the sort of the unlearning that I need to do about romance, right? Like, it's sort of cliched, but we wouldn't keep saying it if it were easy, I guess. I, you know, I'm a very smart person, and I always understood that it was good that I was smart, but I shouldn't be too smart. I shouldn't,
Yes.
like, make other people uncomfortable, especially men,
Yep.
right? And so I never was like, "Oh, I'm gonna dumb myself down,"
Right.
but it's almost like I learned to code switch with
Yes.
men.
Oh my god,
Like, I
yes.
learned to code switch my intelligence in romantic relationships so that
Uh-huh.
I didn't make him too uncomfortable. And it turns out there are dudes who are into smart women who want their partner to be smarter than him, you know? Like,
Mhm.
it turns out that is not actually a thing that
Mm,
we need to do in order to be lovable. I
mhm.
don't need to be smaller in order to be lovable. And the fact that I thought that I did, that's the thing that I'm, like, really learning and seeing more clearly, you know? So, like, I have one partner, when we first started dating and we were texting, he was like, "I'm so attracted to the way you use parentheses." Like, and I went off on this tangent about, a medieval Jewish philosopher, and he just followed me, and, like, he liked it. He
Uh-huh.
wasn't like, "Oh, this chick's too smart."
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that has been really eye-opening for me, that I didn't even fully realize I was doing it. And now once I see the pattern, I see that I was doing it, but I don't know that I realized because that's how code switching works, right? You just kinda do it. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, like, again, back to Tom Sawyer's Fence, like, not only were we sold this lie that this was, like, the pinnacle of our existence, there was also this, like, scarcity mindset,
Mm,
and, like, this idea of, like, if you don't accept this one, like, there may not be another one. There
right.
may not be another suitor coming, and this idea of, like, being super polite, like, when I first went on the apps, like, every guy who messaged me, I was like, "Oh, thank you, you seem nice, and I don't know," like, even ones I was, like, not interested at all, because I
Mhm.
felt like I had to be polite, and, like,
Right.
"What? No."
Yeah.
I've realized that, like, I'm not auditioning for them. They're auditioning for me. And I think that that was always true. And I know that I'm a good-looking person. I have thin privilege. Like, this is not, like, universal. But sort of the idea that, like, we don't have to settle I do think is universal. And this idea that like it's better to be with this person who's not quite right than to be by yourself. Nope. Nope. That's also another thing that polyamory does, right? Like I love I love my partners. I genuinely do. And I don't think I could be with any of them if they were my only. Like there are
Mhm.
things about each of them that would not work for me
Mhm.
in a sort of in that like nested living together traditional romantic. But the things that would be deal breakers for that, it doesn't matter in polyamory. It's fine.
That makes sense. Now, what comes to mind is I think about I've never been married. I've been in monogamous relationships. I've had long-term relationships that lasted many years, but I've never been married. And so I hear from people who've been married a long time or have been in a monogamous relationship for a really, really long time that it's hard to sustain a relationship long term and to make it work and all of that. And so the thought that comes, it seems like it would complicate things that you're trying to make it work with multiple people. I mean, it sounds like the opposite ends up being true, but I'm not sure that I yet fully understand why. Why is it not even harder than making a monogamous relationship successful?
Well, so I think because I'm able to accept in the same way that I'm like, I'm not going to shrink myself
Mm-hmm.
anymore for your comfort, I don't need them to change for me either. Right. So, like, I have one partner who really likes to make sure that we're in contact every day. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't think that he would, but he just loves me so much. He wants to be able to text with me every day.
Okay.
And that's beautiful. And that's great. And like, if we were in that sort of traditional monogamous kind of romance, I might feel a little bit suffocated. But as it is, like he knows the status. I've been very clear. We only see each other once a week. And this like I'm seeing other people. Like I've been very clear from the very beginning. And so I'm able to keep the space that I need.
Right.
The other most regular partner is kind of the opposite, where he needs a lot of space. And so, like, we'll text or we'll see each other, and then I won't hear from him for several days or a week, which at a different stage in my life would have driven me crazy. I would have been like at the phone, like, why hasn't he written yet? Did I do something wrong? Where is he? What's happening? Does he
Right.
not like me anymore? And now I'm just like, okay, he'll come back when he comes back. I got other shit to do.
Mm.
And so that's what I mean by it making it easier. Like when they're your only, like all of the tick marks need to be checked in order for you to feel, for me at least, to feel comfortable. But, you know, if the one hasn't written in a couple days, like the other one definitely has. Like I don't need constant attention from the one. I don't need the other to back off. Like it
Yeah.
just I'm able to accept them as they are, even as I'm saying like this is who I am and
Right.
these are sort of my boundaries.
What about jealousy? Like, doesn't come up or that hasn't come up for you?
I just don't. I don't know. I mean there's some research about like attachment styles like from early childhood. I think I have secure attachment, but
Mhm.
I just don't really get jealous.
Uh-huh.
So I don't, occasionally I'll the closest I have come to jealousy is like actually for girlfriends, like a friend that I went to grad school with who was like really, really close. And now we live on opposite sides of the country. And sometimes on my Facebook feed, I'll see her with like her current best friend. And I'll be like, yeah, but does that person know about, like that's the closest I get to jealousy. Like I just
Your
don't. Now,
partners aren't either?
well, like that's actually why they met one another. The two most regular was, and this was true actually with my spouse as well. Your brain, if you are feeling a little bit jealous, like your brain turns that so-called rival into like a superhuman, right? And then you meet them and they're just a dude and you're like, "Oh yeah, that's cool."
Right.
At least that's been my experience with when
Yeah.
partners get jealous.
Yeah. Hmm. Now, how you talk about no one person can fulfill all your needs, which I totally get that, which is why I've talked a lot about decentering romantic love from our lives and
Yep.
why does it have to be the be all end all of everything? relating to your situation and the model that you're living, what about emotional intimacy? Does the distance keep you from being able to experience that? Or
I don't think so.
no?
And in fact, that's why I mentioned that I'm at least somewhat demisexual. Like, the emotional intimacy is essential to me. That's what I want. I mean, the physical intimacy is great, but it's better when there's emotional intimacy. I'm not interested in sleeping with strangers.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
each of the people that I am with, I'm with.
Right.
It's not just sexual.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in a strictly sexual relationship. That wouldn't be something I would pursue.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, I know before we started recording, we started to chat about the subject of ethical non-monogamy. And I know that it's a very layered, complex, nuanced topic, but I would love to hear your take on it, not just like what it is, but how do you navigate it and how do you work out boundaries of communication and that sort of thing?
Yeah. I think communication actually is the absolute key. Communication and transparency. Like, as I said to my daughter, like, I'm not lying to anybody. Not only and I'm not lying by falsehood, but I'm also not lying by omission. So every one of my partners knows about what I'm doing and who I am and the fact that I have multiple partners. Most of them know about no, they all do. They know about the other partners. Sometimes, one will text and I'll be like, can't talk now, on a date. Like, I'm very upfront and straightforward about what's happening. And I expect that of them as well. Like, I don't want the play by play. I
Mhm.
don't want to hear about like every stroke.
Right.
But I do want to know, that they're dating who I guess I don't know if I wanna say I wanna know who they're dating, but, I mean, I'm happy to know, I just don't care that much. We are very clear about, like, the thing that feels the most important, which is not about the emotional piece of ethical non-monogamy, but is about this safety, is
Mhm.
that, I'm tested fairly regularly. I expect that of my partners as well, and share the test results so that we
Mhm.
keep each other safe. But yeah, I mean, I really think that communication is ultimately the key
Mhm.
to any kind of ethical anything, but non-monogamy in particular.
Okay. All right. Now, it sounds like in your polyamorous relationships, it it I think you identify as a cisgendered heterosexual woman in polyamorous relationships, right?
Yeah, the I'm definitely cis. I'm the heterosexual piece, like, I am definitely more attracted to men. I'm not particularly like, it's a very special woman who turns
Mhm.
my eye,
Mhm.
but all kinds of men turn my head. But, it's that piece, like, this is a little off topic, but, like, I always resisted the label of queer because I was in what I now know is a hetero passing
Mm.
relationship, and, my friends who are lesbian or gay men, like, they face danger for who they love, and I didn't. And so it felt like if I called myself queer, that I would be, like, getting the street cred of that label without actually
Right.
facing the danger that comes with it. And so I
Right.
never used the word. And then my spouse came out, and I
Mm.
was like, "Oh, well, there's danger now, so maybe I should use the label."
Mm.
I don't know where to land right now,
Right.
but yes, I am a cisgender woman who's involved with cis men in polyamorous relationships.
Okay. Because I think that that's another assumption. I think there's an assumption that when you have a when you're living a polyamorous life, that means, anyone, and like that there's
Sort of pansexual.
yeah, yes, yes. And
And
that's
there are poly folks like that. There was someone
yeah.
that I dated briefly who is married and their girlfriend lives with them, and
Mhm.
he's not the hinge, like, the wife and the girlfriend also are romantically involved. So that
Mhm.
happens for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the complexity of it, I think, is that every connection is different. It can show up in very different ways, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. I also want to talk about the project that you're in in launch mode or preparing to launch mode?
Yeah, preparing to launch. My 50th birthday feels like a good hook.
Well, welcome to an amazing decade. I'm leaving it at the end of this year. It's been a doozy, but it's amazing. So welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
So tell us
Yeah.
about the blog, the memoir.
I am a writer. I've part of the sort of shrinking is that a lot of the writing I've done, like I write professionally, but nothing that you would know was mine because I marketing copy. I write long form fundraising letters over other people's signature.
Mm-hmm.
So I've written hundreds of letters over dozens of signatures, none of them mine. And so part of this, like realizing I don't need to shrink is wanting to write over my own name. And this experience, this journey that I'm on feels like I'm still in the middle of it. And I know I'm still in the middle of it, which is why I want to sort of do it as a blog, like a memoir blog, rather than like write a memoir about the last year. I think that there are lessons that I'm learning that folks will want to read that will be useful to people. And I know there's like interest because of this prurient interest. Like, wait, she's sleeping with how many people? Like, I know that will be part of the draw, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine. But I also think there's like really important lessons about being a full self, about like not settling to make other people comfortable that I want to share. And I think that particularly in midlife, like in some ways, we're, at the age where we don't have any fucks left to give. And in some ways, the limiting beliefs are so ingrained at this point
So deep.
that it's hard to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so like I don't know. I'm excited to share that. I'm also just excited for the creative expression. So I'm also like, one of the things I didn't tell you is this whole experiment has like unlocked some creativity for me. I'm writing poetry again for the first time in like 20 years. And I am an illustrator, amateur, but I'm actually pretty good. And so what I'd like to do, I'm hoping that this project, which I'm tentatively calling Hot Flash of Genius,
Love it.
my current plan is to do like a weekly newsletter, but it'll alternate between essays, poetry, and illustrations, all about sort of my experiences in this. Not the polyamory is like the hook, but
Mhm.
really what I want to talk about is like discovering myself and giving myself permission to be who I am
Right.
in midlife. That's really what I want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. I can't wait. Great. Tracie, this conversation has just been fascinating. And I really, really thank you for being open and willing to share, personal parts of your life. Anything that you want to share that you were like, oh, wait, I need to make sure they hear this, or I want to make sure they take away this. Anything else?
Wow. I guess I just want to say, like, I'm not suggesting that polyamory is for everyone. It's definitely not.
Right.
It is definitely not.
Mhm.
So I don't want someone to take that away that like Tracie Guy-Decker said that I should be polyamorous. That's not what I said.
Right.
But what I do want to say is that it's actually would work for more people than realize.
Mhm.
And some of the lessons and the like just fundamental assumptions that make polyamory possible, I think actually probably should apply to everyone, like
Yeah.
around transparency and communication and, just being clear about what our needs are and what our like red lines are that we shouldn't cross, that our partner shouldn't cross. Like actually having those conversations that are required in ethical non-monogamy, I think
Mhm.
probably should be required even in monogamy. So I
Yeah.
guess that's what I want to say.
Agree. I think in all of our relationships, friendships, like and any relationships that we have, I mean, there's so many lessons there, I think, that apply for sure. Awesome. Thank you, Tracie. It was great talking with you today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Blueprint Breakers podcast, Rethinking Relationships in Midlife, a conversation about polyamory. And a very special thank you to my guest, Tracie Guy-Decker. And thank you, the listener, for listening and sharing this episode with your friends. If you haven't done it yet, please remember to follow or subscribe, and please give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you are using. Have a great week. Keep on breaking those blueprints and rewriting your own.